Welcome to Unwarranted Music Opinions, a show in which three music nerds pummel each other violently with whichever music they desire, physically, mentally, emotionally, just worn out by the end of the recording process. I'm June Lindberg here with Brian Courtney.
Hello.
And Chaz Jenkins.
Hello.
And today's episode is just a standard episode. Anything goes, and we're going to kick things off with my record. So lately, Brian has been kind of expressing a desire to explore.
AKA being a bitch.
Maybe we've been hitting him We've been hitting him a little too hard with the new wave, with the punk, with the 80s. I've been going real hard on that June core on the show this season. And this kind of coincides as he is exploring older records from the 60s, from the 70s. So I thought, why not choose my favorite jazz record? It's my personal favorite jazz record ever. And we haven't talked about it, I think maybe one or two jazz records on the show in its entirety before. But I'm actually personally pretty into jazz, actually, especially this year. Over the past year, I've listened to a lot of jazz records, especially from the 60s, some from the 70s. The record in question for this episode is Karma, released in 1969 by Pharoah Sanders, who is one of the progenitors and biggest names in the spiritual jazz subgenre of jazz. Pharoah Sanders also, he has credits on saxophone all over the 70s and the late 60s, working with artists such as Alice Coltrane. He definitely brings this very alive and exuberant and honestly kind of joyous presence to the music that he's on. And this record, Karma, is a very spiritual, very religious, very celebratory. And me personally, I don't really connect with themes of religion that much in music, but it's the emotion behind it. It's the emotion behind the performances and just how much they're feeling this long, 30-something minute jam. I've said before that one of my favorite things in music is hearing instrumentation, just performances, and hearing a bunch of little different things going on in the instrumentation. And as someone who grew up on the Grateful Dead and grew up on big, long, extended jamming, this is kind of right at home because it's all about the texture of the instruments, how they all come together, individual little phrases and lines that are full of energy and life. But that's just a preview of my thoughts on the record. We'll kick it over to one of the two of you.
Chaz, rock, paper, scissors, dude.
All right.
Let's go. All right, on shoot.
Okay.
So I'm going to say it. All right. 1, 2. Okay, we got to do it a little bit quicker.
Okay.
1,
2.
1, 2, 3, shoot. Okay, it's hard with the lag. Okay. 1, 2, 3, ready, go.
1, 2, 3.
Shoot. All right, yeah, cool, whatever. I win, I guess. That was terrible. There's a little more latency than I expected. So yeah, anyway, Pharoah Sanders. I should let you go first. I wasn't ready. So, Pharoah Sanders, I've listened to some jazz before. I am a bit of a tourist, did Kind of Blue, did A Love Supreme, tried a little bit of Kamasi Washington. But
that is the trifecta of I've never listened to jazz.
Yeah,
I got into music in 2015, 2016.
Yeah, pretty much.
That is so Kamasi Washington in particular, and then you have the two most acclaimed jazz records of all time.
This is I just heard about jazz, basically. The one jazz record that I've heard multiple times through that stuck with me was the Montana Roberts Coin Chapter 1. Because I kind of wanted to make my way through that, it was a story, so I was like, okay, I can make my way through these albums. And jazz, you don't really sit with like you do other music, for me anyway. So that's really my very limited experience in the jazz world. And I've never really been blown away or really enraptured by the sound of jazz in my listening experience. Oh, Africa Brass was another one. That was another Coltrane record I listened to. That was maybe the one that was the most alluring to me outside of Montana.
Actually, that's my favorite Coltrane record. I love that record.
That one's really good. It helps if the cover's good. I just love really good album covers with that kind of thing. It helps kind of give imagery to the sounds because there's not so much.
Yeah, that album cover's badass.
My songwriting taste is pretty pedestrian. I like thoughtful or catchy. I'm pretty normie when it comes to my favorite kind of. So jazz for me is kind of has a barrier to entry because it's very instrumental. It's very movement based. It's kind of listening for different instruments and stuff is not my forte. It takes a long time for me to get to shit like that. So this is my favorite jazz record I've heard easily, far and away. I didn't find this thing difficult at all to get into. I found myself wanting to go back to it. I found it really memorable on arrival. I think it has so much energy and that live feel you were talking about, June. I think it has that spirituality that I could really appreciate in music. The only jazz piece I've heard that's like, hey, this is pretty moving, especially in the first half of the song. It's kind of in two parts, and the first part is like there's just so much that happens in like the first third of the track. I noticed that it was in halves, but the first 10 minutes really is, I mean, you get this huge ensemble, this overwhelming rush of instrumentation at the beginning, and then that goes on for about 3 minutes, and you're just trying to soak in this explosion of emotion, and then it gets into this more minimal piece with just some percussion, and then the bass starts to come in, and the second bassist comes in, and it builds and builds for a couple of minutes on this kind of linear piece, and that goes on for like a few minutes, and then you get another rush of emotion into these vocal passages, and the instrumentation by the end is just so fleshed out and rich. It feels so live. Like it feels like there's a huge band playing in a big room with great acoustics.
That's probably exactly how this was recorded.
So yeah, and look, there's kind of a hang up with this thing, I guess, when we're talking about it for the show, because this is a classic piece of music. This is a well-known, highly celebrated. This is kind of like a Beatles album to jazz. You know what I mean? Like this is like that well-known, that praised in music, and especially in jazz music. But I like my inexperience with jazz and just my general lack of knowledge around the genre. It would have taken me. I don't know if when I would have heard this. You know what I mean? Because I might. Jazz is so huge. There is so much jazz out there. Like it's and so much of it is by kind of like like people really talk about it's an artist genres in jazz because the people talk about Coltrane and Miles Davis before they're ever mentioning records. It's just names. And I hadn't heard Pharoah Sanders, and I hadn't heard of this record either. So I feel like this show is pretty instrumental into me getting to jazz because this one is like it's all gangbusters. It's just all awesome the whole way through. There is not a single thing I dislike about the record. And also it has the appeal of just being so engaging and just having the spiritual feel of this thing is really a big selling point for me. Because what's great about music is it's tonal, so it can trick you into feeling things. And so the spirituality or like the religious, I'm not particularly religious or spiritual myself. Like, I would pretty much consider myself like an atheist. But like, when I hear it on this shit, I totally get it. Like, there's more God in this song than any church I've ever been at. So there's a lot of humanity on here and a lot of great expression, and it's all played extremely well too. And it's got this huge, not really a huge lineup. It's 7 or 8 people. I know there are 2 bassists, a percussionist, flautist, flute player, great flute player, and obviously the saxophone, which of course it's a jazz record. There's going to be some brass, but this thing screams. Sometimes I don't know if it's a voice or a saxophone with how high.
The way that Pharoah Sanders, the way that he plays his saxophone is so expressive. It's not about the notes that he's playing or the speed at which he's playing them. It's how he's playing them, because very often he'll just choose a handful of notes, very minimal kind of phrases, but then like stutter them out a little longer and just put so much power and emotion into what he's playing. Like I said before, it kind of gives it this celebratory, like, a huge rush of emotion, and like the music just has to come out, like it just kind of explodes, and it can't be kept in any longer.
Chaz, what do you think? I'm kind of rambling on a little bit.
So I think I should start with my experience with jazz before I kick off my thoughts on this record. Out of the three of us, June is probably the bigger jazz nerd, but I think I come a strong second because jazz.
I think your jazz background is stronger than mine. I think your like background of like probably growing up with it or like living around people who were into it is probably stronger.
And I've played jazz. I was in jazz band in high school for a short time, first chair actually, and I got to solo over some classic jazz pieces. It was a ton of fun, and that jazz is like the best kind of music to play. It's so much fun, improvising and soloing and the grooves. My favorite type of jazz is early jazz. That's the kind of stuff I could listen to all day long.
Like what era? Because there's early jazz could mean like the 20s through...
Yeah, 20s through 50s, barely digging into early 60s.
So like bebop type of stuff?
Yeah, shit that you'd hear on like Fallout 3, you know, in the most normie sense of the...
Early stuff.
Yeah, early jazz. That's my kind of stuff I love to listen to. I also really like avant-garde jazz. A huge.
I got an avant-garde pick that we might be doing.
I do too.
So this one,
I do too.
This album kind of covers the gamut. Like this album has a lot of like just to talk about you talking about all the different. I mean, there's a ton of avant-garde.
This is my first
and spirit. You know,
this is my first dip into spiritual jazz. It's not my first rodeo with soul jazz though. But I've got an avant-garde jazz record on the way too, June. If you know the name John Larkin, that's going to be a fun one. But
John Larkin.
What are you looking at?
John Larkin, Brian. JOHNLARKIN.
Oh my god, it looks like it's actually good. Like people are into it. It has a good rating.
I like how with Chaz it's like, wait, it's gonna be okay. It's not gonna be terrible. Go on, Chaz, with your thoughts.
But we'll talk about that another time because I don't want to spoil that one. If you know the name, then you know. But you know these two didn't, so
I know now.
Yeah. Yeah, love jazz. Absolutely adore it. One of my favorite genres of music. It's not a genre that I listen to all the time, though, but it's one that I have a lot of knowledge of. You're right, June grew up around it a lot, played jazz, was in jazz band. It's just a genre that's been part of my life for the longest time. Like I said, first dip into spiritual jazz, so there's some religious context here. You're right, Brian. Like, you put it perfectly. More God on this song than any church I've ever been to. It's all about the emotion with it. What sells me, however, is the stunning songwriting. The landscape of sound in this album is breathtaking. We've listened to a few albums that I've mentioned before create landscapes of sound. Like this one defines it. The first track, 30 minutes long, 2 chords, that's it. And somehow they make it seem like an entire fucking symphony with so many different movements. It's an absolute journey.
Yeah.
Not the best song here, though. Colors is the best song.
Really?
Yes.
For Colors.
That fucking melody and his vocals and just the vibe that's where I like feel a spiritual awakening. Not the first track, it's Colors for me. But that first track is an impressive piece of music. The instrumentation, you got, like Brian said, flutes, you got sax, percussion, the vocals. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, it's jazz. Like, that is the cream of the crop right there.
But, like, everything shines through. Like,
absolutely,
you can hear everything in this. It's such a... I love how overwhelming it is. Pretty much the whole...
Yeah.
Like, for a majority of the track, for a majority of the movements. Like,
gotta praise the vocals.
The shaking percussion. I don't know exactly what it is. It might be a maraca, because it's really what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
And the bass is nice, too. I love how full it sounds. The vocals I gotta praise.
How the piano and the drums like are mostly quiet, especially in like the first half, but by like the middle of the track they just get so much. There's this part where it's like almost like a jaunting, like just like moving forward, the part where the drum bum 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 bum, and then it just goes.
Yeah,
I think that's, like you said, it's only 2 chords, but there's so much change in the instrumentation and in the arrangements and how they're played to just make a huge journey just based on this very simple foundation.
Yeah.
That you just can kind of get lost in for 30 minutes and forget that you were even sitting there listening, or if you're sitting and listening to this album, then you're doing it wrong. You should be kind of standing and just like,
Yeah.
I just do my kind of, do my like.
There's some visuals here.
I just do like my dumb like nerdy little groove, right? But this is an album to dance to.
I don't think so. I don't think. Well, for me personally, I'm not. I wouldn't deride you.
I don't know. That bass is pretty groovy. There's a beat there. I just like
to soak it in. Personally,
I've got to praise the vocals. They're bassy, got so much soul in them. That's where the soul jazz I think comes in. Colors especially. Just the way he lists off those colors, like blue and green. So fucking good. You can find me all day long. That's the best song on this album. Couple nitpicks. I like the freakouts on the 30-minute track, but they don't do enough for me that I think they're supposed to. They're not like cathartic releases for me like I think they're trying to be. For me, it's the grooves. Like when the actual melodies are kicking in, the freakouts are cool and they're quick. Like they don't overstay their welcome, but it's just like, this doesn't really do anything for me. I think it just wastes time, because we have a 30 fucking minute song that you have to sit and experience. I think that time could have just been used for more catchier hooks or solos or something. That's just me. Lyrically, while I really love this album, like, I love the lyrics and colors.
Are not the focus, though.
I know,
they're simple, but the music.
I know
they don't need to be any more complex.
I know, but it's just like with the imagery that we're trying to get here, I feel like they could have just hit a little hard. Like colors, that's where the lyrics really shine. But like he just repeats the line a couple times in the 30-minute track. I feel like
I know, but it's because it's a mantra. Because he says it and repeats it, and the music does the arguing for him. He doesn't have to go into detail or create any other pictures. The musicians are painting the picture for him. I think that the feeling and the overall theme of the record comes through in the instrumentation much more than it does in the lyrics.
That's fair.
By design.
I don't know. I just wanted a little more there. And I'm conflicted. It's only 2 tracks with a 30-minute song and a 5-minute song.
Well, I mean, it's not uncommon for jazz to have very long tracks.
Right.
It's not uncommon for jazz to have, 2 tracks on a record and they both be 20 minutes.
That's fair. I don't know. It's
big arrangements. Think of it like classical, right? Think of it like classical music. It's a big arrangement.
I guess with just how much I loved colors, I guess the single track, 5-minute standard length. More of that would have just been awesome. Most people come here for that first track. Like that's all everybody talks about. I don't think Colors gets enough love at all.
I mean, the whole record's incredible. Like I would say Colors is really great as well. And it ties into the first track as well with like the creation themes throughout.
Right. I just lyrically, musically, spiritually, I think that song just brings it 100%. And I think more tracks like that would have just been awesome.
To quickly jump in just to help you out a little bit. The vocalist is Leon Thomas. It's not Pharoah Sanders.
I know, yeah.
And he has a few solo records. And just glancing through, it looks like his vocals are a pretty big part of them. That could be a cool thing to check out. Okay. If for the show or not for the show.
And here's my thing. Of that. If you're going to have, for me, jazz is all about the instrumentals, which are fantastic here. But if you're going to have lyrics, that's the point I want to ride home. Maybe just go a little harder. Because if he'd just gone hard on the lyrics, it would have just provoked the imagery even stronger. Like it's a nitpick. Like I said, it's not a critique because it's amazing. But if you wanted to just go that extra mile, it wouldn't have taken away anything. That's the point I'm trying to make. But like I said, the type of jazz that I love is purely instrumental. Very rarely has vocals, and when it does, it's standard lovey-dovey bullshit or whatever. I mean, this thing is awesome. It's just a few nitpicks. It's hard to complain, though, with how much emotion this thing garners, with how much it keeps me captivated for the full 30-minute ride, with only a few, complaints here and there. I mean, this thing is fantastic. And, I mean, I would love to do more spiritual jazz if it's like this, and soul jazz. But we need more jazz on the show. I hope to rectify that in the next season.
This is an easy pick.
401 on Rim, June. This is as easy as it gets. For all the
reasons that you described, I think that we've done a pretty decent job of describing what the appeal of the record is. It's just such a journey. And there's not a whole lot more, really, for me to add on top of what Chaz especially has gone into detail about. I will say that I love the freakouts on this thing.
Of course you do.
They're very, but to me, they're like brief spurts of free jazz, right? Of like not the quieter Ornette Coleman.
I mean, John Zorn.
Earlier
I mean,
free
that
jazz, but like
sax.
the later.
That sax is John
like
Zorn.
wild and crazy.
That sax is the
but
prequel.
the thing about it is, it doesn't come off as aggressive or misanthropic or dark in the way that like John Zorn will have come off. This is like a weird example of dissonance being
melodic,
somehow bright and uplifting, even in its dissonance. There's definitely a distinction to be made on this record. The freakouts, the wild and unhinged moments on this record aren't descending into chaos in the same way that other free jazz records might be. And that's definitely an appeal in and of itself, but on this record it sticks with that. Somehow just the way they're playing and the amount of emotion, it's not like Pharoah Sanders is trying to like murder his saxophone.
Yeah.
In the same way that John Zorn or Peter Brotzman, who doesn't play saxophone, but I don't think so anyway. Other like free jazz, well, John Zorn isn't really free jazz. Anyway, he isn't trying to destroy, they're not trying to destroy their instruments in the way that free jazz can sometimes sound. It's like they lose all structure in their celebration, but it's still a celebration.
Yeah.
It's just this unhinged
It's cathartic.
joy.
It's supposed to be
anger.
A cathartic release that brings right back into the groove. And I will say, though, how they transition back into the groove with the bass and maracas and percussion is so fucking crispy. Like that is like that is honestly some of my favorite moments. How they get back into the groove. That I gotta mention that.
I guess I would say it's not like chaotic or any. I mean, it is chaotic, but it's I don't see it as
it rides a line,
It's a burst of emotion. I see it as nothing but this just human chaotic release that happens in the midst of. I mean, the whole record is so overwhelming that then when these parts come through, it's like we go from 11 to 12.
Yeah.
And they're just so mind-blowingly loud and expressive. So I don't really see any, I could see chaos in them, but not necessarily in a dissonant way or anything. I just found it to be this emotional outburst. And it's just, and the whole record is just so human. I don't know how else to describe it.
I agree completely.
The themes of like creation that are expressed, the themes of like needing a guide in your life, and it's just such a human thing to want to have a purpose. And so these explosions are kind of like, maybe grappling with that or finding the purpose. It's all very it gets kind of abstract at that point when you try to interpret it, but that was my feeling, that it was mostly positive, chaotic, but not dissonant.
Well, it is dissonant. There's atonal dissonance. Like that's like.
Yeah, I know. Like tonally,
emotionally, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was going for.
Emotionally,
like the sound
it stays on that high and doesn't go down.
Well, if I had to, put my nerd analyst goggles on,
there's a visual here.
Our creator has a master plan. Maybe the song represents God weaving together, the planets and creating Earth and creating human life. So when those freakouts happen, that's the big bang, life is created. I think that's the idea of what they were going for. If I had to analyze the music of how it represents and then you got colors, which is plays right into that as well. I think that's the whole, why the album's called
Primal.
Karma. Yeah. Why the album's
Primal
called Karma.
is a word we haven't used yet.
I don't know why the album would be called Karma, though, but that's what I get with the lyrics and music and those freakouts. That's what that represents. But I don't know what karma plays into it very much so.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either looking at it like a whole piece like that.
I also think that Pharoah Sanders and a lot of the spiritual jazz artists back in the 60s and 70s got pretty into Eastern religions.
Okay.
So that could definitely have something to do with it. Alice Coltrane is a very prominent example, and she worked closely with Pharoah Sanders at this time period.
Right.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
So, decent 8. This album kicks ass.
I'm going to go a strong 8 to a light 9. It's fucking fantastic.
Ooh. Give it a 10,
what about
June.
you, Chaz?
I already gave my rating. Decent 8.
He already rated it.
Well, yeah, this album's a 10.
Yeah.
It's my favorite jazz record. One of my favorite albums of all time. It's just an explosion of emotion, and it captivates me every single time. I don't really have a personal story to go along with this one, and that's kind of abnormal for a 10 for me. But I don't know, there's just so much emotion in this, I can't help but feel that emotion. This is like a perfect plane ride album for me to just put on and close my eyes and get transported, further into time. This is definitely one to check out if you have not.
Yeah, no, this is a good starter for jazz.
If you want your jazz to be
Super
particularly
engaging.
emotional.
Yeah, super engaging,
And
expressive, overwhelming at times. Just a lot to take in, I guess is the best way to describe it. There's slower stuff you can start with, but for me, this one was like, I'm here. All right, like this is for me. This is jazz. Like it's a good album.
Insert B movie pun.
I picked Johnny Cash's American Recordings. This is his first
Why don't you
album.
start over and talk like a human? Instead of like, I picked Johnny Cash's American Recordings.
No,
if you look to your left, you'll see
I picked Johnny
my pick.
because it's funny. It sounds funny.
If you look to my left, you'll see
Johnny Cash's American Recordings. Fucking Christ. Hold on. Give me some silence.
American Recordings.
It's like when you press the button at the museum.
I am Brian. I like Johnny Cash.
I want to be loved. I picked Johnny Cash's American Recordings. It's the first record of his on Rick Rubin's American label. It's from It's from the 90s, right?
94, big head.
Your artist introductions are the worst. Johnny Cash, famed country artist, been around since the 50s. He gets huge and famous with some absolute classics of the genre. And then in 1994 pairs up with Rick Rubin on production. And Rick Rubin obviously has a lot of production credits all over the place. So this is a pretty interesting merging.
So the reason that Rick Rubin...
For American Recordings...
What? No, I want to give the context now. You did. That's good. You did the first part.
All right.
So the reason he's paired with Rick Rubin is at this point, Johnny Cash, it was safe to say, was washed up. His career was kind of tumultuous like this basically the whole time. He came out very strong and then started to wane in his fame and was kind of getting washed up. And then his most acclaimed albums, his live records, Live at Folsom and Live at San Quentin, came out and kind of revitalized his career for a little bit. And then shortly after, he went to Columbia Records, and after a very unsuccessful stint following the Columbia Records deal with another record company called Mercury, he was pretty much washed up. I mean, there was not a lot left for this dude. Country was so it kind of become niche. Like, there was so much more popular rock music, so much more popular music in general just coming out, and country never ever came back like it did in his heyday. And he was a pioneer of the genre, really, or one of the most noteworthy figures within it. At
least in the outlaw country genre,
and
he's huge in that scene.
He's an original, and he's known as the original outlaw, and it's easy to see why. The dude was there at the inception of this. He is the original country artist. There aren't many that are standing next to him in that regard.
He's not the original country artist, but he definitely had a unique persona at the time that he represented. Was hugely...
He represented the irony of the American dream. That's who he represented, like an outlaw.
He kind of represented like the scuzzier side. Yeah. Like he's on the fringe of society and stuff like that. I guess the one comparison I could think of, it's like, Woody Guthrie was before Bob Dylan, but more people know Bob Dylan, sort of thing. Just because his personality, I'm talking about Cash now, his personality is larger than life. It really is. On those live records, you kind of get that feel. He's able to just tell so many stories and just kind of assume so many perspectives and tell great stories with his songs. And he had this mind really for prison reform and how prisoners were treated in America. And he would play tons of free live shows at prisons all around the country that were not recorded to tape. So, but that's his peak, right? So now we're kind of 1991 on Rick Rubin's American label. Rick Rubin grabs Cash because he feels like there's still something left for him. And this album has no backing band on any tracks. It is recorded in basically like a living room setting. And I think in Cash's house is where pretty much every song was recorded except for 2 live cuts. And all produced by Rick Rubin. And a lot of the songs are not even Johnny Cash's. These are old songs that would have been originally passed around by word of mouth, and you wouldn't have played them for you. I mean, these are very old American
folk songs.
American recordings, so it kind of tells itself here. There are 4 Cash original cuts on here, but the rest is covers, and there were some songs that were written specifically for this album. The most notorious of which, it would seem, is the Glenn Danzig song 13, which was written for Cash for this record. And there's a Tom Waits cover, there's a Leonard Cohen cover, and then some much older songs like Oh Bury Me Not and Why Me Lord. So 13 tracks, 50 minutes, just about.
No, it's 41
minutes.
Yeah, it's
41 minutes. Okay, 41.
It feels
minutes.
like 50 minutes, but
and
it's not.
It's a pretty long. It feels like a long record because there are a lot of chords that are reused, a lot of chord progressions that are reused. It's very, very simple. What do I like about this record? I think on this record you get the personality of Cash shining through. Now he sounds much older here. I mean, the age in his voice, while he's still a very good and capable singer and has this great low voice that's super distinct and instantly recognizable, his age on here significantly affected the sound of his voice. Not for the worse, though. The stories, the songs that are on here, even though some of them are covers and some of them are originals, are all pretty much good. There are some really, really good cuts on here. And this is just such a different context to hear Johnny Cash in, because the thing is, even with his older material, there aren't a whole lot of records that are this somber. A lot of them have backing bands, like the Columbia stuff and the Mercury stuff. They put a band behind him, and he's kind of, and he has a backing band behind him on the live album as well. Not that makes those songs worse, but what makes this album so unique is that the environment it was created in was Rick Rubin told him, I just want you to play what you want to play. This is your record. Just play what you want to play. You don't need a band or anything. And these songs are pretty much all Cash's choice, or maybe people gave him stuff. Like with the Danzig case, and he played it and they liked how it sounded, so it's very lax in its creation and very somber in its presentation. There are a couple of upbeat songs on here, like Tennessee Stud. The Man Who Couldn't Cry is like a straight up comedy song, and Delia's Gone is kind of a humorous, kind of the most classic Johnny Cash song on here. It's kind of akin to Cocaine Blues, with this like man who murders this woman he's in love with, Delia. He just ties her to a chair and shoots her.
The most classic Johnny Cash,
her ghost in prison.
The most classic Johnny Cash lyric of all time will forever be, "I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die." I mean, that is Johnny Cash incarnate right there. It's just straight up murder.
Most people probably, that line is kind of like bigger than him. Most people probably wouldn't even know that's him, Yeah, that's pretty much it. There are, I guess my gripes would be, I have very few gripes with it. I think it's a really good record. I think it runs maybe a little bit long. I'm not a huge fan of the Leonard Cohen and Tom Waits covers. I've not heard the original cuts of these songs, and I've not heard any Leonard Cohen, but the performances just don't really capture me like some of the other ones do. I think my favorite songs are probably Delia's Gone, Drive On, Why Me Lord, Bury Me Not, Tennessee Stud, Redemption, and The Man Who Couldn't Cry. That's a lot of the tracks there, but there's a few in between that just kind of, I'm not a huge fan of the Glenn Danzig song either, personally. I guess the reason I picked this record is because it's just so interesting to hear Johnny Cash in this context where this is kind of like a comeback record, and his live albums were sort of comeback records too, because these American recordings, all four of them, really five, because there's some posthumous ones, are pretty ravely reviewed by Cash fans and just country fans in general, or music fans. It's the last chapter of his career. He released 4 of these things, and then he died, and then there was a 5th one released posthumously, and then a box set, and that's it. So these are the last recordings, of Johnny Cash, not this album specifically, but these collection of albums. So it's going to be interesting to hear these, given me getting into Cash this year, and this, I didn't really know where to start with his older stuff, but this seemed to be pretty ravely reviewed. So yeah, it's Cash, his guitar, his larger-than-life personality, some songs that aren't his, some songs that are, all of which are well written, all of which sound really rich. The production is so rich, and then 2 live cuts that kind of break things up.
Okay, let's get out of the way. Johnny Cash, American legend. One of those figures in just history in general that is larger than life, as you mentioned. He's basically an in real time folk hero when you think about it. Just when you hear that name, the Man in Black, it's just there's so much aurora around him that is undeniable. As a comeback album, this makes a lot of sense, and it makes so much sense to see why this did so well, how it just revitalized him in such an era like 94. We've talked about this, but 94, a lot of good shit was coming out, so it could have easily been buried.
Is it 94?
Yeah, 94.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 91. Sorry.
No, 94. So it could easily get buried. The best thing about this album for me is the production. The live feeling, how it very much feels just like a microphone placed in front of Johnny Cash and his acoustic guitar and just, go at it. The live cuts are pretty awesome on here. They give it just so much more character. All right. I have a lot of issues with this album, but I want to get out of the way that I liked it. Every song I like. There's not a bad cut on here, but there's just some problems with it that I feel like hold it back from being like, a really great record. It slogs. The pacing on this thing is awful. The first 5 tracks, I'd say, boom, boom, boom. And then we halt to a stop in the second half with a couple of 5-minute songs that just go on way too long and just really add a lot of unnecessary padding to the record. Like I said, 41 minutes feels like a lot longer than it is. Lyrically, though, stunning. But I'm a little disappointed that they're covers, that the originals...
Thing about that that's an American folk tradition. That's a folk tradition to do to different versions of things.
know, but if you're going to
I feel like that's just not something to be disappointed in.
I'm disappointed because the originals on here are just as good. I would have rather have more originals than covers. But this is really late in his career. That's more of a nitpick. Because I think lyrically this album is stunning across the board. And
you got to think, Chaz. I mean, he's not too far removed from. He existed when those covers were a thing. He probably grew up around those songs.
I mean, one of his most famous songs,
as they were anyone else's.
One of Johnny Cash's most famous songs is a cover of a Nine Inch Nails song. I mean, so go figure. My point is, lyrically great. Just would have loved some more originals. Pretty fucking one note in the instrumentation. Now, here's the thing. You guys got onto me for my critique of this with Bob Dylan record. Because of when that came out. That's fair. This is 94, however, so there's no excuse. Because the thing about
dude, I'm sorry. That's so stupid. Hold on. I got to speak up. That's so stupid. Textually, you got to understand, it's just the presentation. He's always had this band behind, this backing band.
Right.
The appeal has been Cash. You know what no one's ever said in their entire life? Oh, the bass player's fucking crazy on this Cash record. He's not even the best guitar player in the world. Now, I'm not knocking the instrumentation, but what the appeal of Cash is, hands down, I think you can say definitively, is the songs he writes, and how he says them, and who he is.
Let me finish my point. The thing about the Bob Dylan record that made that more tolerable, it was more of a nitpick in that record, is because I think Bob Dylan's charisma and charm was just so overflowing on that record. And that record is longer than this one.
I agree that the pacing is off. I agree that it slogs a little. I agree that the instrumentation is a bit one note. And the reason why I think that, and I didn't think that about the Bob Dylan record, doesn't have anything to do with contextually. Bob Dylan record was released 30 years earlier, because I think even in 2020, you can take somebody with just vocals and an acoustic guitar and make it fantastic. I don't think the number of instruments plays into it. What I think matters and distinction here is that I think, as Brian said, a lot of chords are reused, a lot of chord progressions are reused. These songs are played very simply, whereas on Free Will and Bob Dylan, there were not particularly complex chord progressions.
But some beautiful acoustic picking. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Various different chord progressions and finger picking patterns, whereas I don't think there's any finger picking going on this record.
And another point I like to make is that with the Bob Dylan record, like I said, the flow and charisma was just so much charm. Johnny Cash has that in spades on a lot of his records too. But on this one, like you said, Brian, it's way more somber. It's not enough to keep me captivated for the full 41-minute runtime. I really start to check out near the back half because it's just not enough. Some variation, maybe with the vocals or the acoustic guitar, would have helped this immensely because it's just not enough. And that sucks to say because Johnny Cash, like you said, no one comes to a Johnny Cash record for the other. They come for Johnny Cash. I mean, the dude's a living, the dude.
I can't even think of a song of his that I've tried to learn to play that has a barred chord in it. That's not F. Dead ass. I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to knock him for his playing or whatever, but every time I show up to one of his songs, I could probably play this. I don't even think What's the most complicated chord in this album? I mean, it's F. It's F. This thing is E, A, D, G, C. Like, and there's not even a capo used half the time. Like, the dude is a very traditional as traditional gets. I mean, this is like the fucking people who made the guitar like are playing this.
I just don't think it's enough to warrant this runtime. I really don't think so. But I gotta say, vocally though, amazing. The coarseness in his voice. There's just so much history in the way he delivers.
What are your favorite songs?
Favorite songs? Delilah's Gone is a banger.
Delia.
Oh, Delia? Okay.
Yeah. He actually says that as the first word on the album.
Fuck. Fake fan.
He actually says it twice in a row. Delia, oh Delia. Delia, my wife.
Dang, the
first 3 words.
That ruined my joke too. I had a great joke there too. I called the song a banger, quite literally, but nah, fuck it. I ruined it. Anyway,
that is terrible.
Delia's Gone, great song. The Beast in Me, for sure. 13, Tennessee Stud. My favorite song, Like a Soldier, and the closer, The Man Who Couldn't Cry. Favorite song is Like a Soldier.
Like a Soldier is maybe one of my least favorites.
Well, it's just
probably my least favorite.
It's just the most upbeat. That melody's the most memorable. I mean,
dude, Tennessee Stud is upbeat as shit. That song is about a horse. Like that song,
The melody's good on it too. But that closer though, The Man Who Couldn't Cry, it's not a funny song, Brian. There's actually some serious depth and emotion in that song.
I thought that song was a lot darker than the audience was making it out to be.
A lot more. What makes
it so powerful is the audience's kind of nervous laughter with some of these lines he's delivering.
Really?
It's actually kind of this depressing story about, like I said, a man who couldn't cry because his emotions were just so locked up. And Johnny Cash there are funny lines, and he goes kind of over the top in his description of this man as being someone who is just super, super tough. But then when he's listing, didn't cry when his parents died, didn't cry when his dog died, had all of these terrible things happening to him and couldn't really feel the emotion. I think that is a kind of a look on what society expects men to feel when dealing with crises.
See, I just didn't read it that way, just because there's so many lines that to me came off as straight up
because of the audience laughter.
Funny,
the audience laughter. But if you
not even that, I thought it was funny. When he's he got laughed at by a whore, or he got beat up in jail, didn't cry. The doctors come in and they're like, "This is no cream puff." That's a fucking hilarious line.
Right,
and then
there are funny lines, but I do think the point of the song is not.
I thought the end of the song
has a point.
I don't think it doesn't. I just thought of it more as a comedy song because at the end, he dies and sees his dog in heaven, and then everyone who ever wronged him suffers. Literally, he says it's so over the top, like you said. The prison burns down to the ground, and then the land it was built on is drowned.
The reason he dies is because he's finally able to cry, and then he cries so much that he dies.
He cries so much that it rains, right? It's it rains 40 days.
No, he cries so much that he dehydrates and dies.
Oh yeah.
But
which is funny.
That's funny. Right? But do you not see that even a little bit as I
could see that.
He got to the point where he could feel emotion and let himself do it. He kind of just fucking spiraled and ended up dying because he just it's just a fucked up state to be where you can't feel anything.
I can't deny that.
So I think that he's probably this character in the story kind of just snaps and kind of has a breakdown at the end of the story because it's been holding in all these emotions and everything's just been welling up inside. Yeah. And that's not a healthy way to process emotion. And I think that's kind of what this song is supposed to be about. I agree, Chaz. The audience laughter
adds so much
adds to this uncomfortable feeling because I'm sitting there thinking there are funny lines, but I'm sitting here thinking and I'm this is actually kind of a poignant story that has real life application. Don't let your emotions well up so long that they overcome you. Allow yourself to feel things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just didn't really think of it that way before. I wasn't sure how to interpret it. And so once, I guess the more I listened to it, the more I kind of found certain lines funny and just kind of chalked it up to the song. I first expected it to be exactly what you were talking about. And I think maybe it is a little bit, but I think, the more I listened to it, I was I think this is just a song about this character who can't cry. But, to say there couldn't be more to it would be stupid.
I think Johnny Cash is an artist who very often works in Johnny Cash and American folk music in general, and country music of like outlaw country music, artists like Cash in general, all of these things often use metaphors. And they'll be talking about one thing, but the meaning of a song will be something different. Think about The Great Compromise by John Prine, where ostensibly it's a song about a guy losing the girl to a dude with a sports car, but in actuality, John Prine wrote it about the Vietnam War and veterans being mistreated. And I think Johnny Cash is an artist who quite often uses those tactics as well. And I think this song right here, and even John Prine, right, like had that. There's always a slight humorous bent to those serious moments. I think this kind of goes right along with it. And to be honest, though, I think this is one of my favorite songs on the record, not just because of the meaning, but because I think it's one of the better chord progressions. It's one of the more interesting.
I like the religious songs on here the most. Those are some of my favorite songs. Oh, Bury Me Not might be my favorite song on the whole thing. I just love this huge prayer that kind of introduces it, and then Cash's voice just when the song kicks in, when he starts singing, is just like, it just elevates it. Like it gives me chills. Like just when he comes in with the "Oh Bury Me Not," it's just so powerful. Why Me Lord is like kind of a trick song as well, where it's like, usually that's like reserved for suffering, but he's like, why am I so blessed? What have I, why am I so lucky? It's just a very grateful song. And Redemption, which is a Cash original, and it's maybe my favorite Cash original on here. It's just such a fucking amazing description of like the blood running down Jesus's limbs on the cross and how it like fueled creation. Like it's just such a it kind of is in some ways like Pharoah Sanders. It's so primal and such a artistic and moving rendition and idea, about his love for God and his religious beliefs. It's just like fucking awesome. Like it's one of the best songs here.
Badass.
I'm experienced enough in Tom Waits to probably know what Down There by the Train sounds like when Tom Waits sings it. I don't really like the cover here because it just doesn't really lend itself to Cash's voice. It's not like, Tom Waits. The thing about the thing about Tom Waits, I mean, that song is probably that long. Like it's probably just a true cover. Tom Waits gets on his ballad shit. He is done when he is done. He doesn't go as long as some, but he really rides songs out for,
it's just
usually verse chorus. But the thing is, he has such an interesting voice and he's always playing a character. I just don't think that like really suits Cash at all on this record.
I would disagree.
At least the way he plays the character.
Cash is all about characters and stories and larger than life, adventure and tales. And a lot of it has a twist on, like I said, the American dream. Down There by the Train is probably one of my least favorite cuts. It's like I was saying though, Chad, like even though is good at characters and stuff, Tom Waits does the same thing. I mean, Tom Waits is like always playing a character on tracks, just, like almost always. There is no variation.
The character Waits has on the track doesn't suit it. Just, I don't think,
for me,
it doesn't sound like a Cash song.
For me, it's a cosmetic. It's a cosmetic thing, Brian. Like the pacing, there's no variation. But that's a lot of problem with a lot of these songs. That's just a problem with the whole album. But like when it's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it's like, okay, like I said, the first 5 tracks, bam, bam, bam. Like we are on a breeze.
He crams a lot into 2 minutes too. Delia's Gone has 3 verses.
Yeah.
3 or 4.
But Down There by the Train is when it's like this album comes to a screeching halt. And not for the better, I
was surprised you said you like a Soldier so much.
Love that
song.
Like
one of the least
great lyrics on that.
Like, and I don't remember much about it. It came on today when I was listening for the show, and I was like, I don't even remember this song.
I think the melody on it's super strong, and I just love Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash feels alive on it. That's the thing. Half the time on here, he's somber, but he still has like emotion into him. But a lot of times, it just feels like he's bored out of his gourd playing these songs, and I am too listening to it. But Like a Soldier is just so upbeat and so much like wit to it. I just
probably like Drive On too.
Yeah,
probably like Drive On.
I just love the way he's like, I'm like a soldier getting over the. It's awesome. It's fucking awesome. I don't know.
I mostly concur. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm somewhere in the middle because I love Delia's Gone. The Beast in Me, I think, was a Cash original.
No, it's by Nick Lowe.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick Lowe. Okay. But I think, as you said, Brian, he's choosing particular songs to record. I would think that The Beast in Me is at least somewhat introspective and autobiographical. given the ups and downs of
I mean,
Cash's career.
He struggled with drug addiction and things like that. I guess that is a pretty important song on the record because
it's one of the best. His delivery on that, his bass in the voice is addicting. It's awesome.
I love that it's not played as like I have a beast in me. Like it's not like it's very like
no,
it's
a dark and it's a sad thing that it's something internal that he wrestles with. Mm-hmm. Drive On, I think, has one of the more intense like guitar performances and vocal performances, especially that chorus.
Intense for this record. It's really upbeat.
Yeah. I like 13 a lot. Tennessee Stud is pretty good, but I don't like adore it.
I adore it.
The Man Who Couldn't Cry.
You're a Tennessee Stud, Brian. You're a Tennessee Stud.
Thanks, buddy. You're my Tennessee mayor. I'm gonna sex you.
But overall, I do kind of agree with Chaz that the pacing is a bit off. The songs are very one note for 40 minutes. And I wish there was just more variety in the way these songs are being played. Like if some of them were like, you know me, I love finger-picked guitar. If there was just like some more interesting finger-picking arrangements, like there are ways to make simple chord progressions more interesting.
Yeah, you're just all about the fingering.
By the end, it's all about the fingering. You just got to make sure the fingering is up to snuff, because if the fingering is good enough, it can make 40 minutes seem like no time.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it can.
Oh, hell yeah.
It can.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm going with like a decent 8. I really like this album. Yeah.
Decent 7.
I'm going with a decent 7 as well.
Liked every track. It's just cosmetically. And here's the thing. If you want to listen to an album that does what this one is doing much better, Free Will and Bob Dylan, Diamond in the Rough. The album I picked is the debut, released in 2019, Off the Charts by Salvo. The regrouping, reunion of UMO, Unwarranted Music Opinions, fan favorite band, Pain. Dan Lord, Adam Guthrie, most of the original members, back again with some new, fresh talent.
Moment of silence for Mike Post. Moment of silence.
Who did not return.
He's not dead.
Right. No, just like from the band.
Moment of silence for when people are dead.
No, this is different. This one's different.
As you know, we interviewed Dan Lord when this album was in the process of being made. He said it was going to have more of a Celtic vibe. Still some of the familiar elements that people loved about Pain. Tons of instrumentation being utilized. Clever songwriting. I love this thing. Absolutely. It's my second favorite Pain thing ever. And has become so, especially with the show.
I don't agree with that, but I totally see why, honestly.
It goes midgets with guns, Off the Charts, Full Speed Ahead, Wonderful Beef. And the lowest one is like an 8. I love this band so much. They've quickly become probably my favorite band of all time.
Have they dethroned Weezer?
It depends on how good Van Weezer will be, and I will get back to you.
Why does it depend on Van Weezer?
Because that album had 2 fucking amazing singles, but that's it.
It might have, honestly. It might have.
So
I haven't heard them, but that's a weird one for it to ride on. It's a weird turn of events, I feel.
So Dan Lord's back, this time with Adam Guthrie taking some of the songwriting cred, who's the main guitarist of the band since the beginning. I mean, it's Pain. Amazing instrumentation, so much variety of instruments being utilized. I think lyrically around, this is a lot more mature, but still has the tongue-in-cheek nature that makes Dan Lord's lyrics very memorable. It's the shortest album, so it's a breeze. I think it flows amazingly, a lot of memorable moments. It holds a special place in my heart as well because I got to see this band live, finally. Me and my girlfriend on New Year's drove all the way down to Alabama, see these guys. Fucking amazing live show. Met Dan himself. Met most of the band members. Got everybody to sign the vinyl.
Great picture.
Yeah.
You should put the picture up in the video of you.
I will.
Dan.
Got everybody to sign the vinyl. They played a lot of the songs from here. Just a wonderful time. But this album is amazing. And I will describe why later on. But that does play a part into it, the emotional level. But I mean, just across the board. What a stellar return to form. Decades, 2 fucking decades since the last full-length release. Full Speed Ahead came out in 1999. And, I mean, Jesus, like 2 fucking decades since more music released. And it's like they haven't missed a beat. I mean, and they have another one coming out in the works. Super excited for that. Love this band. Love this album. Crush My Dreams, you bastards.
This album, when you were listing off things that we had asked Dan if they were going to be in this record, are in this record. The varied instrumentation, the multi sort of leveled songwriting. I would not call this album formulaic. This album doesn't rehash ideas. There are a lot of different things going on. You might have a synth on one track. There's a violin on another track. There's female vocalist, a guest vocalist on one track. There's some sort of like hip hop influenced drumming on a track. There's a country-ish track. Then you have the classic sort of ska punk sound that Payne was working with in the 90s. The issue for me, and I do have some significant issues with this record, is that I think that it is a very diluted version of everything that I loved about Payne when I did love a Payne record and a Payne song. Now that isn't necessarily, it's not like it's bad. It's not like it's a bad version.
Worst
right?
take
and still really,
ever. Oh my God. Awful take.
And there
Awful
are
fucking...
still some very good moments on this record, and there are still some good songs on this record. But it feels to me like the added instrumentation doesn't have the same punch that it used to. I don't think the melodies here are as strong as they have been on previous records, with a couple exceptions. I also think that the production is pretty weak.
Yes,
overall.
The production is the weakest thing, but they made it themselves. Like, they had to have a GoFundMe. They weren't going to have like the stellar production. This was a
true,
yeah.
But it does add to my general experience, or takes away from the experience, because I think Dan's vocals are mixed too quietly. They have a level of like, I don't know if they're just mixed a little weirdly. I don't know if it's added a little bit of reverb or something, but I feel like Dan needs to be up front and center because he sounds exactly like he did 20 years ago.
Hasn't aged.
Most shocking moment on this album comes like 30 seconds in when Dan starts singing, and I'm like, is this like a fucking old Payne song? Like, what happened?
I also think that the guitar, sonically, needs more punch. I think the guitar just sounds a bit flat.
The guitar is crunchy as fuck on this thing. It's crunchy as fuck.
I don't think... I think if you'd listen to a song on this record, and then you go back and you listen to one of the more punk, guitar-led songs on Midgets with Guns, I think the guitar here sounds a lot less energetic, sounds a lot... I think just sonically, just tonally. Maybe the riffs that are being played, Chaz, are still good, right? Like, I don't think that... It's not like... What's his name? Adam Guthrie?
Adam Guthrie.
I don't think his playing is any worse. I'm just talking about the production and the tone and the way the guitars sound. They're just not as bright and as crunchy as they used to be. They just don't have a heft to them. It's hard for one of these songs to really ride on the guitars, because I just don't think the guitars are as exciting sonically as they used to be. So they sound mixed a little lowly. They sound maybe just like a little flat. Like they just don't have that brightness to them. And I would agree that this is an issue throughout most of the record for most of the instrumentation. I think the drums could have been just snappier and louder.
They're so quiet. The drums are so quiet.
They are. I think that they're just some mixing and some production issues that hold this back. And yes, maybe that came from the fact that this was a crowd-funded, independent release. And I think that's really cool. And we've talked before about lo-fi music and music that has very, very low recording budgets. That tends to be something I love. But this isn't necessarily lo-fi. It's just poorly mixed, in my opinion.
On the production, I just want to say, I want to let you finish your point, but just like, I feel like with the lo-fi ones, like Lost Wisdom is a really intimate kind of lo-fi recording. But it's consistent. Like, it sounds consistent. Like you said, the problems on this, every single song has a production issue. Either Dan's vocals are too low, the drums are too low, the guitars have no bite to them at all. Or, there's a production issue on like every single song on here.
And again, I would say that the additional instrumentation, for example, one of the things that kind of hooked me about Midgets with Guns back when we first reviewed it on like the 5th ever episode of the show or something like that, was the violin that comes on. What was the track? Is it One-Legged Girl? Is that the
Yes.
name of the song?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's one
The violin that comes on the track One-Legged Girl sounded so good. It just sounded so clean and so beautiful, and just sonically, it was recorded so well. I don't think that the added instrumentation here, whether it's the violins or the horns
xylophone
or the piano or the xylophone, they still have that ambition and that creativity, which I think is awesome. I still think to this day is awesome, and it makes this album not really a disappointment to me, because I know they're not just phoning it in. It's not like they didn't try on this record. It's not like this is pain without the energy or pain without the heart, because it's still there. I just think that from a songwriting perspective, from melodies, and from a production perspective, from an arrangements thing, just aesthetically, I don't know. It's hard. Technical, just all these technical things are bringing it down for me, where I can see, Chaz, why you love it so much, because you're a huge fan of this band, and you listen to this band and you hear a song like Goblin Orchestra, and your thoughts are probably, when you're hearing that song, fuck yeah, Dan Lord is still, like, he's not phoning it. And I think I agree with you, actually, lyrically on this record. I think that more than anything, what shows that they are not just phoning it in is the lyrics are really solid, introspective, mature. They're not just trying to write the same songs that they wrote 20 years ago. And in that way, they're very different than a band like Weezer, for example. Chaz, I think you'd probably agree with this. Like, Rivers Cuomo is still writing songs from the perspective of like a 20-year-old, right? Whereas I think Dan Lord on this record, I mean, it starts off with Anthem for the Middle-Aged Man. Dan Lord is a dude who was in a ska punk band back in the 90s. This isn't written by a 20-something ska punk. This is written by a guy who's probably a dad who goes to church on Sunday, who nerds out about D&D and stuff, and who's got the band back together and has written some songs. And there are meaning to these songs.
It's so fucking wholesome. It's just so fucking wholesome.
Yeah, it is. And I don't want you to get caught up on my score.
Here's what
too much on the
Here's what pisses me off the most about what you have to say, June, because you have been on record saying
you have no chance.
I'm about to expose your ass. You have gone on record saying that music that captivates you the most is hearing something and always hearing something new in the instrumentation, whether it's a new melody or a new instrument. That is it across the board on this thing. I'm still hearing new things. And I've listened to this, like,
I know.
The double digits are of how many times I've listened to this fucking album. It's so good.
This is like watching June talk to me, like when I get excited and she's like, I know, she's trying to calm me down. She's like, I know. Like,
would you allow me to explain a little bit of my thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
Because as I've said, there's varied instrumentation throughout this. Little things going on in the background. I just don't think that the melodies that are being played and the way that everything sounds together works as well as it used to. Because sometimes these songs end up sounding a bit muddied with all of everything that's going on. Not everything is as clear as it should be. Not every piece of instrumentation that pops in is doing something that is all that interesting. And that's the songwriting issue that I have, is that I don't think that the core songs here, with some noted exceptions, let's go through my exceptions, all right? I got two favorite songs on here, and that's The Only One, which I think has a really nice like piano or I think it's like a piano or glockenspiel or something. That's one of the examples of that added instrumentation that I think does a really good job, because it's a memorable thing that do 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 do, like that. It adds a level of brightness.
That's not in that's not in The Only One. Do do do. The piano coming in. No, that's Things Go Away that you're thinking of. The do 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 do.
You're right. And that's my other favorite song on the record.
The Only One is the bum 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 ba 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 ba.
It's mostly guitar-less.
Awesome.
It's mostly guitar-led. So I was thinking about Things Go Away, which
the lyrics
is sort of a bittersweet, like, you will lose people in your life. You will lose things that you love in your life. And that's something that you have to accept and not dwell on and become too engrossed in. Just, you have to allow yourself to move forward. Musically, it's one of the best, most catchy songs on the record. I think the only one and Things Go Away are just my two favorites. And everything else on that first half of the record, I'd still enjoy, even if I think that the songs could be better, like if they were reworked, right, with new production. Tracks I'm not that much of a fan of.
Piss me off, June.
I don't think that the melody behind Goblin Orchestra is that great.
Get out of here.
It's
Whack.
fine. It does. There's only one song on this record I dislike.
This is hilarious. This was the one song I did not expect both of you to not feel too hot on. It's crazy that I know exactly the song. Keep My Peace.
Say it together. Yep.
It's Keep My Peace.
Wow.
And
I thought for, like I said, I can never predict what you schmucks are going to think. I can never, for the end of time, predict. I thought that song, it's the most experimental. It's got a lot of different things going on. It's
whoa. No. This is like the worst Fiona Apple song Fiona Apple never wrote.
What do you mean?
I know. I'm sorry.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, like, you would never hear a song like this on Midgets with Guns, Wonderful Bee for Full Speed Ahead.
Right,
it's
and
so
that's
different.
one of my issues with it. It's so out of place. It doesn't sound like
It's
Pain.
really
The
grown
only
on me,
way you
though.
know it
I
sounds
kinda-
like Pain is to Dan Lower's backing vocals.
It's really grown on me, though. I love the horn, like ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da. Awesome.
I thought their vocals
think the
didn't
chorus,
work together at all.
The refrain has a decent melody, but other than that, everything else about this track, I don't hate. You know, it's not like I'm cringing every time it comes on, but it just doesn't do anything.
Wow, that's crazy.
I don't think Castle or Cross has a great. I don't think Castle or Cross has a great melody either.
That is
It's
wrong.
a very standard melody.
Castle Cross
Land Beside the Sea.
Okay.
As well, that one I think has a very basic chorus.
Yeah.
With the da 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 da, like.
But it's so
Land Beside the Sea.
It's so genuine. Oh my.
Sure, but it doesn't mean that the melody going is that interesting. Like it just doesn't hook me.
So Chaz, what are you gonna say? Who cares? Because it's so genuine, dude. If the melody sounds bad to me,
but I don't think the melody sounds bad. The melody is one of the strongest melodies on the whole album,
dude.
Da, 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 yeah,
oh, dude. That
it's awesome.
I think it's very I think it's just super plain. I think it's a very plain melody when they've been very inventive in the past.
The instrumentation on that song is so good. False opinion.
So
bad take.
I pretty much agree with a lot of what June had to say. I like this more than June. The production murders this thing because I think it's mostly good. Like, I'm mostly positive. I really don't like Keep My Peace, Castle or Cross, or Land Beside the Sea. I don't like those songs straight up. Like, they're just not very, I don't think they're very good. The melodies are, like, these are the only songs in this whole thing that are boring. And Keep My Peace is like, I don't know, is this here?
It's a head scratcher, you know? Yeah. It's a very different, it doesn't feel like it belongs on this record.
I know, I've shit posted a lot because we're all good friends. We're all really comfortable with each other. Like, I don't mind, I get mean with you guys sometimes just because I'm like fucking around. But like, I'm just being honest when I say I literally don't know why Keep My Peace is here. I don't like the melody at all on Land Beside the Sea. Do not like Castle or Cross has the worst sounding guitars on the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I would agree, but I just think the synths on that song, Dan Lord's harmonies, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I like Anthem for a Middle-Aged Man. I think that's a really good start. I like Off the Charts and The Only One. Those are all like really, those are just good songs. Like, look, the thing is, this sound is old, but it's Pain doing it, and it's their sound, and we have the background with this band for me to be like, that's okay. This is the sound they've always done.
And it's not like they're super standard either, because as we've mentioned, they add a lot of different things into it.
I think all
the lyrics as well aren't particularly plain. Like, I think maybe my favorite part about this album is the lyrics.
Yeah, I would say so too. I like the songwriting a little more than you, June. I think most of my favorite thing about this band throughout is the songwriting, because when they don't have the song to play, those are their worst songs. Like the last few songs on Full Speed Ahead, or some of the cuts off of Wonderful Beef. Like, their worst songs are just the ones where like it feels like just any other ska punk song. So I think they have a real talent for when they have the right lyrics and the right song structures to have really good songs. And I think most of these are really good songs. Goblin Orchestra to me is like the most classic Pain moment on here. Like, it sounds like old Pain to me. Like it could fit snugly in on Wonderful Beef. because that record is just such an amalgamation of some, it's not really a thematic. It's just you could throw that song in there. Now, production wise, it's behind, and that kills this album for me. The production, and it's just a multitude of problems across every single song. Sometimes Dan is too low. Sometimes the guitars are too low and don't have enough punch or bite. The drums are quiet on so many of these songs. I can't they're literally just keeping a rhythm, but you can barely hear it. I think the added bits of percussion always go over really well. I don't have really any complaints about the pianos or the xylophones, how they sound. I think they're all used pretty much like how Payne would have used them. I think the songs they're not less inspired, but they lack that X factor that those old.
I don't think they're
Payne
less
songs
inspired. I just simply don't think they're as catchy.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. They just don't have this. They like Fight or Milk. Like those are my favorite Payne songs. Or Square Pegs. Like these songs just really lack that next level. Like they do. Like Middle Aged Man has the change up in the middle, and you have these, and they are buried across this thing. The song about rain is this piano led piece that's its overall sounds pretty good, but I don't really like the last leg of the album, save for the closer, which is another favorite of mine off this thing.
I like the closer.
That sounds like another classic Payne song to me. It's just ridiculous. It's upbeat. Dan is quite the character, I feel like, and he's really the strength of this album because the players are really good, but the production has pretty much killed any and all effort they put in sometimes. Like there's not a single bit of drumming on this thing that really lights me up or gets me excited. Damn, I'm sorry. Watching Chaz take a bite of that shit was really funny, and I was trying to hold it together, but I couldn't. I'm sorry, Chaz. That was so awesome. So
I don't want to disappoint Chaz so much because I know that he loves this record. I know that he loves this band, and I know that he was probably hoping for us to come in singing its praises. But honestly, I don't think that I'm being too mean to this album because I'm not trying to be mean to this album. I do really appreciate that they came back and they did something that was so them, right? They came back and they wrote the songs that
they wanted to write.
You hear and you think, oh yeah, that's Dan Lord writing that song. You can tell it's the same band and not like in a way that they're phoning it in. And like I said, they're not phoning it in. Mm-hmm. They're not just kind of barely trying. Like there is definite ambition and effort going on here. And that's what makes me appreciate this as a comeback record much, much more than a band that would like come back and kind of do a rehash and not really do anything interesting. You can tell that there's definitely ideas and thoughts and creativity. Like, for example, if this was an album that was made up entirely of songs like Keep My Peace, I'd be much, much more disappointed. Because even though it's different, it just doesn't have their spirit.
Yeah.
The rest of the songs, I think, do. And overall, it's not like I'm listening to this record and I'm turned off from it and I'm not wanting to hear the rest of it. Like, it's not a painful record, even though it's made of. Maybe it is a painful record.
Woo! Hey, all right.
You did not earn.
You
did not earn that fucking joke. You need to take that back, my good friend. You did not earn that joke.
Overall, thoughts are positive.
Fuck off. You gave it a 5.
But they're mildly positive.
Yeah, I feel pretty much. I'm more positive than June, I will say.
Mildly positive.
Like, I definitely like this thing more than June. I think their songwriting is there, honestly, most of the time. I just think the production just fucking Goomba stomps this thing. Like, just absolutely stomps this thing. And there's, like, a handful of tracks towards the end that are generally not very good. That I kind of June doesn't like the songwriting a lot on some of these songs, and those 3 in a row. I mean, those 3 absolutely not a fan at all. Overall, good. I'm not blown away. I was happy to hear it because I just we've gone through everything. Why not do this as well? The spirit's there. The band could probably still make a good record, but
yeah.
I just think it needs tweaking.
And you know what I also thought.
Wise.
You know what I also thought was, which Chaz mentioned seeing them live, I bet some of these songs are better in a live setting because I bet the guitars sound so much better.
Also, Dan probably has a lot of energy on stage.
Dan is a fucking 8-man. Dan is a fucking 8-man on stage. He jumps around like a goddamn 3-year-old. It's amazing. I
can totally see this album being better live. Like, Chaz, if they came out with off-the-charts live version, like a live recorded version of these same songs, I might like it a lot more.
Honestly, yeah. I would agree.
You have to realize how much the production is bringing this down for me first.
I mean, but
Don't talk with your mouth full. Come on.
All right, listen. My turn.
I know you're upset.
My turn. The production is flawed. Yes. Things do get muddied.
I
Dan's
honestly thought you were
vocals
going to say flawless.
so good. Dan's vocals. Dan's vocals could be a little bit punchier. Drums, yeah, they do get kind of lost in the mix. Here's the thing. I don't come to Pain for that. Never have, never will. What Pain has that a lot of bands don't have is genuineness, humor, likability, charm, charisma, and just smart songwriting that I think is all across the board on this thing. So many different instruments utilized in that classic Pain way that are just so subtle. So fucking subtle. Like the flute that comes in every once in a while, the violin that comes in every once in a while, harp is used, a lot of percussive instruments. They serve their purpose so well to elevate a lot of these wonderful melodies. But some of the best songs on here are the more stripped back ones. Song About Rain is so fucking good. The lyrics on that thing are amazing. So
I like the piano a lot.
So tear-jerking. But you still have some tongue-in-cheek, but the terrible miniature winged vampiric armies. Amazing. Like only Dan Lore could write a lyric like that. But things go away. You have a boy rides in his daddy's arms that swing like hammers and carries rocks. One day those arms fall softly down beside him and they're folded up into a wooden box. Shit! Like you yeah,
that song's really touching
I cannot believe the back half of this album. Oh my. Castle Across and Land Beside the Sea into Whose Thing Is That is so masterfully done. Castle Across, the harmonies there, the synth, the that comes in is so awesome. Land Beside the Sea is the best song on here. I cannot believe you guys don't see that. The fucking
dude, that's like
instrument.
I feel like that's your worst take.
The instrumentation on that song is so good, and the lyrics of it, like, and then and how it goes into Whose Thing Is That with that beautiful, like, sandy shore ambient sounds is
dude,
so.
Whose Thing Is That is so fucking awesome.
It is.
Like, whose thing is that? And like that's a great fucking.
Why's It Gotta Last So Long? Fucking the country take on here. We've seen that before with Pain with 7-Inch Cowboy. Awesome melody on that. The that comes in with the guitar is so awesome. Keep My Peace.
I kind of forgotten about
Keep My Peace is the worst song, but it's grown on me a lot just because I love the lyrics on that thing. I love the breakbeat drumming that comes in, like that kind of like fades in. It's really cool. Love Dan's backing vocals on that. The female vocalist does fine. I've seen her live. She's kind of boring. Like she has like no stage presence whatsoever. She seemed like really nervous to be on there, but I think she does fine here. You know, it's not like the best thing. I mean, Anthem for the Middle-Aged Man, amazing lyrics. The fucking line, I have the power to reclaim what was lost. This is my big chance that I'll get around to it after my nap. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that song is such a good opener.
The instrumental breakdown and off the charts. Oh, with the like the pianos and the guitars and how it just all.
See, the ba-ba-bas in Land Beside the Sea are not, I hate those, but in Off the Charts, it's awesome. So I don't know
I did
what to tell
not
you.
expect. I thought Only One would be the song that you guys hate. When I put this into the group chat, like a long time ago, Brian literally was quoted as saying the single is not good. Now, I don't know if he even listened to it, which he probably didn't, piece of shit. You know?
That's rude.
Did you listen to it when I said it to you?
I don't remember listening to it.
Exactly.
I don't know if I did.
Exactly.
I've listened to a lot of music since then, Jazz. I don't know.
I didn't expect this to be a fan favorite from you guys. I think it's one of the weaker songs, just instrumentation-wise. But, I mean, it's such a catchy song. But it grew me a lot. I mean, just across the board, every goddamn song is a winner. And it's everything I love about Pain. They're back in business. Cannot wait for the new album. It's called The Traveler. Super hyped. I hope it's D&D related. 10 out of 10. Fucking awesome.
What do you think they're going to do, like a Critical Role themed album?
10 out of 10. This album is fucking awesome. And this stung. I'm gonna get you guys back for this.
I don't mean to hurt you, Chaz. These are just my feelings. These are just how I feel.
It's just
I'm feeling
objectively
like a
wrong. You listen to this album.
strong
The
vibe.
only take that makes sense is the production take. Everything else, trash. Get the fuck out of here.
Strong 5.
Ugh.
I'm so sorry, Chaz.
Chaz, you may have my strong 6 and be blessed.
Okay.
So next time we got another show and we're doing stuff. It's a sequel.
You know
episode.
what? Tom would have liked
What?
it. Tom would have liked it.
You can't ride this forever.
Yeah, I can.
Remember, I literally told that to Tom. I was like,
I know.
This is gonna be our
you
fucking
remember
life
I
now.
literally said that you would do that.
Tom would have
So-
listened to that and gone, you know what? June Bryan, you're fucking stupid. Get out of here. And I would have been like, thank you, Tom.
Next time is a sequels episode, and where we cover an artist that we've already covered, but we do another album of theirs. So this is a return to an artist to see maybe their earlier work, their later work, how they've changed. And I'm gonna go with Gal Costa's 1970 album, Legal. There's an album after Gal Costa called Gal, but June's heard it, so I'm trying to go with something that none of us have. I would rather all of us hear something new. You know what I mean? If I'm gonna cover someone again.
I'm going to do another fan favorite that we all really enjoyed, Kraftwerk. Also an album that neither of you have heard. One of my personal favorites, Radioactivity.
Ooh, that's cool. That is
Okay.
like one of the only Kraftwerk records of that era that I haven't heard. So I'm excited to hear that.
1975.
That was fills in a blank.
Electronic, minimal synth, progressive, synth pop. Yeah, good shit. And really short too.
I am going to choose Beck's third record,
Yeah, dude.
released after his breakout record Mellow Gold, but recorded before One Foot in the Grave.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard that one yet.
This is kind of a gift because we're going to be doing Beck mostly chronologically. So I think with this record, you're going to see his songwriting get a little more normal, but still really out there. It's still in that sort of anti-folk vein that Golden Feelings was. But we're getting closer to the strange amalgamation of Mellow Gold. This has been Unwarranted Music Opinions. I'm June Lindberg. I was here with Brian Courtney
Brazil.
and Chaz Jenkins.
Australia.
What? No, say where Kraftwerk is from.
Oh, Germany.
Yeah, boom. There you go.
And
June, say a
we'll
country.
see
Just any country.
Kyrgyzstan.
Okay, yeah.